Well, welcome to our weekly meeting of the Titania Project, and people can know me as Morpheus. I want to present to you a person that I've held in high regard for a long period of time, and he's a very accomplished person in industry and scholastically. He followed in his footsteps of his father to become a physicist, then got bored with that, and then retrained himself to be a psychotherapist. And after 25 years, or during the 25 years of his practice of psychotherapy, he started working with another guy named John David Garcia. And John David Garcia wrote quite a few books. One of the most important ones is a book called Creative Transformation, in which he talks about constructing a new type of organizational system, which John David called an octet, which was a group of 8 people working together for a creative purpose. And he found, after doing thousands of experiments, that they were able to increase the creativity of the group significantly by improving their ethics at the same time. Well, the person I'm going to introduce to you worked with John David Garcia for a number of years and ran many experiments with him in this realm of enhancing creativity. Well, it turns out that if you want to increase someone's creativity, it's a lot easier to increase their ethics first and then increase their creativity. You get more bang for the buck, so to speak. So I've been working with Bob for quite a few years, and we are awakening the world to a organizational model that's never been done before. And but it does have a lot of scientific validation. It has a lot of scientific validation, and because of all the experiments that they ran using the scientific method to be able to come up with this process of non-hierarchical, non-bureaucratic, highly ethically motivated organizations that Bob has renamed to be called an octalog. It's kind of like a dialogue, only instead of with 2 people, you have 8 people involved. And with these groups of 8, we are able to increase the creativity of the group. And if, as we well know, that everything that we have in our lives is all contributed by our creativity, so why not increase the creativity of our groups? It turns out that we're attempting to solve the problems that our forefathers put on us, so to speak, and the current regimes have placed in front of us. We're attempting to use the same thinking to get out of that mess, and quite frankly, it's not going to work unless we come up with a higher level of thinking. What Bob Podolsky has been talking about for many years is going to be the answer, or maybe not the answer, but it's an answer. And there's a lot of people out there that have ideas on how we can make things right in our world, and they all seem to be focused on, well, if we just go back to the Constitution, or if we just get rid of government, or I don't believe those are valid solutions, because, well, first of all, we came from anarchy, and so if we go back to anarchy, it's only inevitable that we're going to come back to where we are right now. And then the Constitution, unfortunately, it just didn't work. I mean, if it would have worked, we wouldn't be here right now. So, and I don't think that, that it can be tweaked enough to be able to solve the problem. I mean, the problem is that we have other people who that are representing us, and quite frankly, I can represent myself just fine and dandy. I don't need anybody else to represent me. If I have a problem, I'm usually out there, I'll tell you about what my problem is, but the problem is that the people that we have elected to represent us, they're representing themselves, or they're representing the bad guys, and so they don't care about you, they don't care about me. So unless we create institutions that make consistently ethical decisions, we're never going to get out of this trap. It's just going to get bigger and worse. So I would like to present to you my good friend and mentor, Bob Podolsky.
Thank you very much. Good to be here. This is a freedom fest, and a fest is a festival, and a festival is a celebration. So here we are celebrating freedom, which is a little ironic, because each year since the founding of this country, we've had less freedom than the year before. Oh my gosh. So what are we celebrating? Well, we're celebrating the freedoms we have left. We're still free to have a meeting like this, which is a good thing, for sure. And let's talk about freedom, okay? Because since freedom is the subject of the day, I really want to talk about freedom. And freedom's a funny thing. It's certainly necessary for us to have a lot of freedom in order to have a thriving human society. Wow, thriving human society. I began asking more than 30 years ago, what has to happen? What has to change for humanity to thrive, to flourish, to do well with this rock that we're on, this planet? And I was looking for answers when I met John David Garcia, and I found some really interesting answers that impressed me so much that for 30 years now, almost, I have been working at articulating those ideas and teaching them. So I guess that means I have a certain amount of stubbornness or perseverance or some such thing. And I want to invite you to be a part of what I've discovered and to make use of it for your own purposes. Coming back to freedom. Freedom is something like health. When you have it, you don't notice it. But when it's in trouble, you start to notice it. And so today we have the freedom movement. Like freedom is the answer in and of itself. And I can understand that because we're hurting when it comes to freedom. And freedom is necessary in order to have a thriving society. Definitely. I've been applying systems analysis techniques to human institutions for many years now, and it's very clear, without freedom, we're not going to flourish. We're going to become extinct, as a matter of fact, in my opinion. That's opinion, by the way. Most of what I tell you today is going to be fact, as opposed to opinion. And by fact, I mean scientifically, objectively verifiable. You get the data, and you can extrapolate the facts. Okay, but it's my opinion that we're headed for extinction. And I have a lot of evidence to support that opinion, though I can't say it's a fact yet. By the time it's a fact, it'll be too late to make any changes. So let's not wait for that, okay? We're not going to wait for that. So we're hurting when it comes to freedom, and my sense is that in this group, we have people focused on many different parts of this problem, the freedom problem, we'll call it, okay? And I made a few notes to myself here as to what some of those are. And for starters, what about political freedom? Our ability to have free and fair elections, for example, without anybody screwing with them financially or otherwise. Some of you, let me see a show of hands, how many of you are focused on getting free and fair elections and a good political process, if there can be such a thing? Wow, okay, some of you are focused on that. Well, it's a symptom. It's not the source of the problem. It's a symptom, and it's worthwhile for some of us to focus on the symptom and do what we can about the symptom. And there are all kinds of processes happening, groups formed to do stuff about that. Cool. Not a solution in and of itself. Now what about having freedom from bad laws? Okay, let's just start with the Patriot Act, okay, and then the Military Commissions Act, and then the NDAA. These are really bad laws. How many of you are focused on them, trying to make them go away? Yeah, exactly. Well, those laws aren't going to just go away. What's keeping them in place is the same thing that put them there in the first place. If we had a system that was designed for the benefit of humanity, so to speak, those laws wouldn't ever have gotten there. Obviously, that's not how our system is designed. It has a different purpose altogether. And by the way, while I'm on this subject, I want to mention that we've been lied to a lot. Most of you know that, right? We've been lied to a bunch. Well, the idea that the government of this country exists by the people, for the people, of the people, oh yeah, that's a great idea. But that's a lie. That's not what is the underlying basis of our government or any government. There isn't a government on the planet that I've found that actually fits that criterion. This was supposedly the first, but that was a lie, and we have to overcome that. So, again, freedom. How many of you are paying more in taxes than you would like to be or think you should be? Yeah. Okay, well, freedom from taxes is freedom from slavery. Okay? On that subject, I have a website, and it has an article on it, and those of you focused on the tax issue should go to titanians.org, and you will find there an article called Why Taxation is Slavery. Now, there are many ways that people attempt to justify taxation. Oh, you got to pay your fair share. Baloney! There's no such thing as a fair share except in the head of some tax collector or somebody who wants to put their hand in your pocket. Think about it. If you and I sat down for lunch, do you have the authority to force me to pay for your lunch? I don't think so. Well, what if there are 2 or 3 of you and you take a vote? Does that make it okay to force me to pay for your lunch? No. No, that's 2 wolves and a sheep having lunch and deciding, by vote, who's going to be lunch, or who's going to pay for lunch. Same thing. Well, taxation is a form of theft, pure and simple. And when you're taxing someone a piece of their life, so to speak, on an ongoing basis, that is slavery. It's as good a definition of slavery as any. So some of you are working on that, and that's where you're focused, right? Are you solving the problem? Probably not. Now what about freedom from martial law? You realize that we have a guy in the White House now, and all he has to do is make a decision, okay, time for martial law, and about 1 million people or more are going to be swept up and disappeared off to FEMA camps to be exterminated. We know that happens. We know it's going to happen again, very likely. Did you know that FEMA not only has huge prison camps with barbed wire facing in to keep people in, they have them all over the country, and they have big collections of large coffins that can hold 4 or 5 people, 4 or 5 bodies. I learned something interesting recently. They also have a lot of railroad cars with shackles welded into them, and most of those, including most of those facilities, have guillotines purchased from Asia. What are those for? Whew.
Cutting up watermelons?
Cutting watermelons, I don't think so. Yeah. The point is, preparations are being made for horror stories to happen, and there are horror stories happening all the time. Maybe not that bad yet. Speaking of horror stories, what about police brutality? That's a euphemism for armed thugs in costume who do terrible things to people. They can pepper spray you to death. They can tase you to death. They can beat you to death with clubs. They can haul you away, throw you in jail, and do all the above to you. And if you raise the slightest protest, they can shoot you. and get away with it. And they're doing it. They're getting away with killing us every day practically. Well, I don't know about you, but that's something to focus on, right? That's something that some of you are already focused on, and you want to make that change. I do too. But it's not the source of the problem. And what about, while we're on the subject of these camps, Department of Homeland Security or Insecurity, FEMA, TSA? Does that ring any bells? I'll bet some of you are deeply involved in striking back at the TSA. After all, look at the thugs they hire, and look at what they put people through. Okay, and oh yeah, they're not the only ones doing strip searches, by the way. Some of those cops with badges are doing strip searches at the roadside, in public, would you believe? Cavity searches at the roadside. I mean, this is supposed to be legal, apparently. Well, that's not any kind of law that I respect. Do you? What are you doing about it? I bet there's some groups here, represented here, who are doing something about that, or doing something about the TSA, or Homeland Security, right? Yeah, okay, well, it's important, but it's not the source of the problem. All right, let's move on. How about control, having control, the freedom to control your own body? Do you own your body? If you don't, you're an out-and-out slave. If you do, it means it's up to you what you do with your body. If you want to destroy it, it's up to you. You know there's a lot of laws against suicide. You can get in trouble if you don't succeed in your suicide. You can be prosecuted for attempting suicide. Imagine that. Like you don't have troubles enough. You're troubled enough to attempt suicide, but that's not bad enough because if you survive, uh-oh, now they got you. Arf. Arf. Dog over there. Anyway, so what about what you ingest? Okay, now this gets into a couple different areas. Some of you are very concerned about the drug laws, the war on drugs, so-called. There's more drug availability now than there ever has been in this country and around the world. And as a matter of fact, our military, I am told, I don't have verification of this, but I'm told our military protects the poppy crops in Afghanistan. Or is it Pakistan? We are protecting the poppy crops because, well, why would we do that if we have a war on drugs? We're supposed to be committed to wiping out the poppy crops. How does that been working? We've got more drug addiction than ever. So I would put it to you that some of us are working on freedom to do what we like with our bodies. Now the objection comes, well, what if you're an addict and we got to spend all this money to get you unaddicted? Well, who says you've got to spend money to get me unaddicted? It's my body, it's my responsibility. It's not yours, it's not somebody else's. Spending stolen money to try to do something for the person who's bent on destroying themselves seems pretty foolish to me, but it's a symptom of the problem. Someone's got to deal with it. How many of you are dealing with it? Yeah? Okay, well. Oh, and on that subject of owning your body, what about your food that you eat? Anyone hear about Monsanto and GM foods? Foods that have been genetically modified, which have now been more recently proven to be detrimental to your health? Are you free to eat what you want to eat? To grow the foods you want to grow? Oh, if your seeds are contaminated by some GM seeds in the next field, you could be held liable in a variety of ways. You're supposed to stop that from happening. Of course, the only way you can do that is to be using the same seeds yourself and buying those seeds every year from Monsanto. Freedom to eat. What about raw milk? You want to eat raw milk? How many people here like raw milk? Yeah? Yeah, you like raw milk. Okay, I'm not a fan of raw milk, but I would defend to the death your right to drink raw milk or anything else you care to ingest. It's your body, your responsibility, not mine. Okay, well, what about lemonade? Oh, your kid's got a lemonade stand? Guess what? Most places now that's illegal. Where do they get off doing this stuff? It's absurd. It takes away from our freedom. And by the way, I'm going to show you in a minute the relationship between freedom and human thriving, because it's not what you think it is, but it is worth knowing about. Okay, and then let's move on to, how about the freedom to do things in private? Privacy as an issue. I bet there are people here who are focused on the privacy issue because we don't have very much left, okay? The powers that be, or the elites, or the ruling class, or the ownership class, whatever you want to call them.
The plundering class?
The plundering class, they are spying on us. Every phone call, whether it's a landline or a cell phone, every email is subject to being read, listened to, interpreted, and they're making a list, checking it twice. And I understand there are already millions of people on that list, okay, because it's not a public list. You can't go find out somewhere if you're on the list. I'm sure I am, and many of you are, because you're here, and there's probably someone right now identifying us by our facial features with a camera somewhere in this crowd. No privacy. But guess what? We have a right to privacy. It's fundamental. Not having it is a symptom. We better attend to it. So what about the right to travel? Okay, do you have a right to travel around the country, around the planet?
As long as you got a driver's license.
You've got to get someone's permission. And to get their permission, you have to buy some insurance. You have to buy a tag for your vehicle. You have to buy a piece of plastic that you carry in your wallet. You don't have freedom to travel. Now, fortunately, up till now in this country, the borders between the states have been transparent. You could come and go anywhere in the country you like without anyone interfering or regulating or controlling that behavior. Guess what? That's probably going to go away. Okay? We're going to get to be like Europe was back before the last World War, where every time you cross a state boundary, you've got to go through some kind of procedure. Show your papers, identify yourself, state your purpose. Why are you traveling? And if they don't like the answers you give, too bad, you don't get to travel. And if you can't afford to jump through all these hoops and get all these permissions, you don't get to travel. You don't even get to drive around your local town without having your vehicle stolen. It's a problem. Some of you are focused on that, right? You're working on that. You got a lot of feelings about that. Hold on to these feelings. They're important. They're motivators, right? And one more thing. I know for a fact there's a lot of people here who have real concerns about the freedom to own and carry arms, weaponry, whether it's a pocket knife, a gun, club, whatever. You know, the Second Amendment was put in place not to regulate hunting or target shooting, but very specifically, the founders of this country wrote extensively about the importance of everyone being armed to defend themselves against the government in case it turns bad. Guess what? It's become a problem, a big problem. And finally, I want to talk about the freedom to contract, which I think of as the free market. Okay? We don't have, and haven't had since the beginning, a really free market where you could go and buy or sell anything you want without anybody's permission. Unfortunately, the so-called Commerce Clause in the so-called Constitution apparently empowers the thugs who are out there to interfere in your free market. For example, are there any retailers in the room? People who sell something, retail? Yeah, okay, we've got retailers here. Well, guess what? How do you like being a tax collector? Because every retailer in the country who operates above board is a tax collector, except in 3 states where they don't have a sales tax. 3 states don't. 47 do. Okay? So all you retailers, I'll bet sometimes you focus on this problem of sales tax. Free market. We need to be able to have private contracts, private transactions, exchange money for goods and services without it all being spied upon, regulated, and taxed. Fortunately for us, a thing called bitcoins has come along, and whether that will turn out to be the mechanism by which we have a free market or it'll be something better, I don't know yet. But it's a good thing. Bitcoins are good because they allow us private transactions. If you use them properly, and by the way, it is important to maintain your privacy while you are using them. If you use them properly, you can have anonymous transactions anywhere in the world. And you can send money to another person anywhere in the world in a fraction of a second. Wow, that's a free market. We need to encourage that. But the lack of a free market in and of itself is not the problem. None of these things that we've been focused on, giving our energy to, giving our time to, is the problem. These are all symptoms of a problem. And I'm here to tell you today what that problem is and what the potential solution is. I wouldn't bother to tell you the problem if I didn't have what looked to me like a solution. All right. For starters, I'm going to write a couple things here. Everything we really value in life, as Thomas pointed out, comes from one or another form of creativity. Let that C represent creativity. What is the content of creativity? Well, there are 2 parts to it. One part is ethical awareness. Now, ethics is a subject that when I was a youngster I thought was trivial, but it turns out it's the most important subject anyone can learn. And we could be learning it in grade school, but we're not. In fact, all of the things that used to be taught in grade school that had bearing on ethics are gone. They've been forbidden. Well, little wonder, you know. The people that own and run the world now, they don't want us knowing about ethics. It's almost a forbidden topic. But we can learn about it very easily. So creativity is the product of ethics and intelligence. If either one is 0, creativity is 0. If either one of them increases, the product or the creativity increases. What is intelligence? Well, it's very simple. It's the ability to predict and control events in the real world. Wow. I want to walk across the room. Who's in control of that? I am. I can just walk across the room. You know? I can control that because I have enough intelligence to control my legs and my feet. Okay? If I were to drop this pen, it'll fall. I predicted that. What do you know? Well, I know there's gravity. I can even predict exactly how fast it's going to fall or how far it will at a given time. All of that is part of this thing we call intelligence. Okay? So creativity is the product of ethical awareness and intelligence. Now here's a tricky part. If someone is going to act unethically, We don't want to increase their intelligence because we'll make them more destructive rather than more creative. Okay. Now, creativity has a number of what I call logical equivalents, because if you increase these other resources, creativity will increase. And when you increase creativity, all of them increase. And vice versa. If you limit any of them, you'll limit creativity. So I would put on that list awareness, love. You know, Jesus taught love. And those of us who come from a Christian background, we talk a lot about love. Why is it important? Well, it's important because when it increases, creativity increases, and vice versa. Awareness, love, objective truth. Objective truth. What's that? How's that different from some other kind of truth? It's testable. Objective truth is just a truth that you can verify. Okay? That's what experiments are about. That's what science is about. The sole purpose of science is not to create gadgets for us. It is to test whether information we receive is true or false. Scientific method, objective truth. When you increase it, by the way, barking dogs don't increase objective truth. And hearing them isn't objective unless we compare notes and say, oh well, we all hear the barking dog. That's being objective. All right, awareness, love, objective truth. And there are others. Maybe any number of other logical equivalents of creativity. If any of them increases, creativity increases. If any of them is limited or diminished, creativity is limited or diminished. They are logically equivalent. Now, going back to the E, an ethical act is an act where one or more of these resources is increased. And for anyone with no one, and this is an important point, no one's creativity is limited or diminished by that act. An act that meets those two criteria is ethical. What do you know? This is a valid ethic. Did you know that ethics can be valid or invalid? Oh yeah. An ethic is nothing but a value, something you want more of, and a belief or belief system that tells you how to act to get more of what it is that you value. Well, what if you follow a belief system and you get the opposite of what you value? Well, the ethic's not valid. Pretty simple. Why don't they teach this in grade school? Well, the people that decide what goes on in grade school either don't know this or they don't want you to know this. We've got to change that. So now we know what an ethical act is. And Thomas mentioned we need our institutions to make ethical decisions across the board. That's the solution to the problem. The big problem is that our what's an institution? Anyone tell me? It's an organization. Oh, my goodness. So our organizations are making unethical decisions. That's the big problem that causes all those symptoms, all those losses of freedom that I just went through the list of, and more. Okay? The big problem is the unethical decisions of our organizations. Can we change that? Yes, we can. By being here today, listening to what I'm saying, you're beginning to change that. And you can be a leader in a worldwide movement to make that change. And frankly, your efforts, your energy, your resources will be more effective if you do that than focusing on any of the symptoms, any of the problems. What happens with an illness? When you go to the doctor and he says, oh, the symptom is a fever, take some aspirin. Does that cure the problem? No, because the fever is a symptom, it's not the source of the problem. if you have a bacterial infection, you'd better deal with those microbes that cause the fever, or you're not going to survive. And that's what's going on now. Our institutions, our big organizations, our influential institutions are not focused on the problems, just the symptoms. And for all of you who are in groups focused on these symptoms, I say to you, you're not going to win this war. You'll win a battle here and there, but not the war. You need to focus on the cause. Here's the cause: unethical decisions. Now, I'm going to show you what I see as a solution to this big problem. To do that, I'm going to erase the board. So how do these big institutions operate? How are these bad decisions made? Well, does this diagram ring a bell? Do you have a feeling about what you see here? Layer on layer of hierarchy. Most organizations use this model. It was invented at least 8,000 years ago. And its purpose when it was invented was power brokerage. The process by which those who have power over others, which is unethical to exercise except in self-defense, they decided to plunder the world. And so some of them delegate some of their power to others, who delegate some to others, and so on. And you wind up with a hierarchy. Now, I have gone into detail in some of the articles on that website about the dynamics of hierarchy and why it's bad. But basically, if you're somewhere in there working in a hierarchy, commands go down, feedback that should be going up too often does not. So oftentimes the head of the organization has no idea what the hands and feet are doing. That's a problem. And when that feedback about the ethics of what's going on can't go to the head of the organization, you get bad ethical decisions. Hierarchy creates bureaucracy, the systematic elimination, destruction, or avoidance of corrective feedback. It's built into the system. So as long as we've got institutions that are hierarchic, we've got the problem. That has to change. So now I'm going to show you an alternative to hierarchy. This alternative came out of years of research. This is not just something Podolsky invented on the spot. This is something that involved 20 years of research with different sized groups, different dynamics within the groups, different rules for running the groups. Now here's a group of 8 people. 4 men and 4 women is optimum. You could have 7 or 9 people with the difference in men and women being 1, the difference in numbers. But basically, I think of it as 8 people working together on an ethical purpose. So they have to know what is ethical. They have to be trained a little bit, maybe a day's training in how to identify something that's ethical and tell it from something that's not. And they have to agree that they're only going to do things that are ethical. Otherwise, it's just a committee. Okay, this is a special kind of group. And I'm inviting all of you to learn how to be an organizer and participant in such a group. I call it an octologue, as Thomas mentioned. Well, if this group makes a decision, it has to be unanimous, or it's not an octologue decision. How do you make unanimous decisions? Well, most people think it's really hard to make unanimous decisions in a group. Consider this. We're going to lunch, you and I. We're going to decide where to go. Now, am I going to force you to go to where I want to go? No. You're going to force me to go where you want to go? No. Could we decide to go somewhere together? Of course. It happens all the time. And in fact, everyone here decided to come together here on this date in this place. Were you coerced? Probably not. You made a unanimous decision to be here. That wasn't hard, was it? With a little training, all the unanimous decisions you care to make in an octologue are just as easy. Ha! There's an opportunity. If we work together on ethical projects with ethical dynamics among ourselves so that our decisions are unanimous, we're going to avoid lots of evil stuff, aren't we? Anyone in the group can say, that proposal's not ethical in my opinion, let's talk about it. And you talk about it until you reach consensus, which is 100% agreement. This whole notion of rule by majority is absurd. It's worse than absurd. It's a force of evil on the planet. Get over it. You don't need it. Okay, so I'm teaching how to do this. And when I have enough people doing this, I will teach others how to teach doing this. Because that's a separate thing. Learning to teach something is different than learning the subject. It's one thing to know math. It's another to know how to teach it. Same thing with octologues. Not complicated. A little 3-day workshop and you master it. A little practice, you get good at it. Wow. This is what I propose we do in place of this throughout our society. Get rid of hierarchies. Build octologues. Oh, you got a project to build a road or bridge? Something big, it takes more than 8 people. What do? Well, you go out and form another octologue and another octologue, and you have an ethical contract binding them together. I call a group put together that way a holomat. It's actually short for a holotropic matrix. Holomat. A holomat can be big. You want to build roads, you might need a really big one. How many people can you have in a holomat? Any number. Think about that. You could have 1 billion people or more in one giant holomat for some ethical purpose. Well, you've got to know how to write an ethical contract to make that come together. Not hard to learn. It's part of what I teach. Okay? So, before you leave here, my suggestion to you is get with me and or Thomas and let's talk about what you want to accomplish using the new technology for organization. Okay? We can help you do it. We will help you do it. And we will teach you, ultimately, to teach the world how to do it. And this is not a fix for a symptom. This is basic. This goes to the root of the problem, the unethical decisions that our so-called government leadership makes. Any questions?
Can't the system over here with the octologue be turned into a hierarchic organization, because now you have this one in the middle and it has these sprouts on it, and I guess they would have their own sprouts?
Good point. Yes, this octologue might create some other octologues, and so on. I hope to see it happening on a big scale. Yes, but how does that turn into this? It comes back to this group of 8. Or any group of 8. Pick any group of 8, blow it up to look like this. How do you turn this into a hierarchy? Well, if the group lets one person be in charge, it could happen. They're not totally incorruptible. They're just way better than this, which is corrupt from the beginning. Okay? So you have to, as a member of an octologue, you have to be vigilant. You have to understand the ethics and speak up if someone wants the octologue to do something unethical. Is that hard? What are the chances, in your opinion, that if there's an unethical proposal on the table, that everyone in the group is going to go along with it?
Low.
Very low. How about that? Isn't that what we want instead of this? where a very tiny group can make an unethical decision that affects the world? Ugh. What I want you to leave here with is a feeling. I want you to feel how important this is, how valuable this is, how useful this can be to you and your goals, your purposes. If you care about any of those symptoms and you're putting energy into trying to do something about it, attempting to do something about it, consider shifting your focus to making this happen in your arena, in the area that you're concerned with. That'll work. Thank you for your time.